Hello everyone. I hope you're doing well today despite the times we're living in. Here are a few more poems from this chapter in history, this quarantine. Spring. I keep remembering that this time of suffering is also many people's first spring. They're seeing startling greens wave at them from the trees and purples bright as toys pushing up plush from the dirt. Some are learning to walk on stubbled grass and feeling its tickling insistence as the blades feel the seeped flattening as inevitable revelation of what has been and will be. They hear the chips and chirrups of the birds and do not miss the noise of traffic, school buzzers, children squealing on the playgrounds. They do not know those slides and swings were not always wrapped in plastic ribbons snapping at the wind. Everything's new and simply true, like the wrinkled gray branches that pulse to bud, then blossom into stars thin as tissue. They will not remember this as a time of darkness. It will just be a story people tell sometimes, how the losses and hollows of what could not be stopped made the flowers seem brighter that spring and necessary in their beauty. The pendulum. The mice are sheltering in place in our walls. I know that now because of the nights I can't sleep, stewing over the news, my body vibrating with the phantom pain of the thousands intubated, suffocating. I heard their rapid heart skittering like an infection in the house before we saw one walking almost calmly across the table and set a trap under the hutch. Last night, I thought I'd never calm my mind, with best estimates of deaths projected into a million. Trying to enter a dream felt like swinging a pendulum into a shallow, teeming puddle. Then I heard it, someone shuffling around downstairs, walking across the kitchen. Had the future broken in already, with food shortages so steep people will loot the houses just to eat and feed their families? But no, it was the mouse, jolting the black plastic trap across the floor, its desperate hefts echoing like the steps of a man. We sat up in bed, hearts beating fast at the way anything alive will fight to keep living. That's why we say the mouse is in the man, the scientists said on the radio this morning, referring to the tests they're doing, injecting their twitching torsos with every suspected antibody to develop a working vaccine. She explained that mice are a lot like us biologically, but we could have guessed that as it went on trying to throw itself from the trap, and we, powerful and cowardly, sat, not unmoved, but unmoving, before its suffering. Much appreciated, reads the markered sign with 2 hearts and a smiley face outside the post office. We are in the bent elbow of history, from which limbs and trajectories will develop the leverage. I mean, to what will we cede our authority, and how can these fallible hands, somehow the same through the centuries, hands that could as well be our ancestors, hold up before late-stage democracy and hoarding greed? This week, a woman in her 80s refused a ventilator. Save it for someone younger. I've had a full life, she said, smiling with her eyes behind the BiPAP. You see something about how someone lived and how they die, though not everything. And some of us may have to fight for the right to go on dying humanly, holding the hands of our families, listening to the stories, small scraps and anecdotes like those squares of wool and calico she'd saved for a quilt. This one from the wedding suit, this from the kitchen curtains, this from the dress you wore on the first day of school. The weave and weft of them worn so thin with remembrance the light comes in, and you see the interconnected threads are tethers for the living, not the source filtering through, not the you whose body's peeling off like that dress you loved so much but outgrew. Now you're bright and more diffuse than those left mute in the room, wondering about this awful unsheathing and its nullities, the way today I wondered about the shards of clay in the street. Who had dropped the terracotta pot? Or had it been broken by the plant's own refusal to stay contained? It makes me ache, our need to participate in living. Children chalking thank yous on the sidewalk. People at their sewing machines making pleated masks from cloth. Bake sales and PTAs and all the ways we make up for our collective bodies that serve until they fail us. Here at this inflection point of history, now at the future's beginning, nothing matters more than acts of caring. Since how you are in daily ways becomes who you were. Since the world to come will resemble the world that's past and will only be the one we make. Last poem, about the weather. We've had several snowstorms here in the month of April here in Chicago, including a hailstorm. So this is about the strangeness of that. About the weather. Yesterday it was 80 degrees. I sat in the yard all evening, hoping to see the moon rise. It was a full moon in Libra. I don't know what that means, but my New Age friends said it was a time to bring the light of our highest consciousness to what we want this world to be. They said some of us, Librans like me, may be experiencing feelings of insecurity. Gray painted clouds slid in, and then heat lightning, huge illuminated bruises that crack the sky in bright white veins, spring's sizzling gristle. The air behind the houses turned violet, magenta, and bile green like skin after a beating, like a reminder that pain and future aren't only man-made. And then the hail began. Ice the size of bone spurs, marbles, golf balls, and whiskey cubes clattering onto asphalt and sidewalks, battering the shingles and denting the hoods of the cars. The times had turned biblical. For us, the befuddled, nearing a cliff, too small in mass to see the symbol of our rooting or its exegesis. Are we the swine, hungry guests at a wedding, or hollow gloves being gusted up on the wind? Are we even in this parable? Some had been muttering warnings, but they had ill-kept hair, a sour smell, and unsteady voices amid all the street noise. Even the poets' eyes were going cloudy, staring at the ice cubes in their border beds. You couldn't see the moon at all. That floating stone was above us, but its constancy seemed remote, outmoded, with neighbors running outside to protect the shining roofs of their SUVs and others standing shocked and sheltered at the windows. All of us remembering the oldest truth. You don't get to choose the change that comes for you. Thank you for listening. Wishing you all peace and health and moments of beauty in the coming weeks.